Today, we're getting a first look at how former Congressman Eric Swalwell's exit is shaking up the California governor's race. 9 candidates are still in the running. And in that heavily Democratic state, the 2 Republicans are at the top, according to the latest Emerson College poll. Former Fox News host and Trump favorite Steve Hilton is leading with 17%. Republican Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco and Democratic billionaire Tom Steyer are tied for second. 23% of voters are undecided. We should say that the top contenders are within the margin of error, which means this race is still anyone's game, with ballots going out soon, early May. Joining me now, one of the Democratic candidates, former Congresswoman Katie Porter. It's good to see you again, Congresswoman. I want to ask you first the question that's on the minds of a lot of voters out there. Eric Swalwell was considered a frontrunner when he abruptly suspended his campaign. He's now under several criminal investigations. You both of you represented California in the House. It's been widely reported that Hill staffers say his behavior was an open secret. Did you ever hear anything or have any clue about what was going on?
I certainly understood and saw many times in Washington that a lot of Congresspeople put themselves and their power ahead of their constituents. So I was not close to Congressman Swalwell, and I did not work closely with him. And part of that was we just took a very different approach to the job. I wasn't one going out and drinking and going to conferences and boondoggles. I was somebody who came home as a single mom to my Purple community, to Orange County families. So I think there were definitely, I'd heard things about him having extramarital affairs. And once I got into this race, that's really when I began to learn more about allegations regarding staff. But I certainly had no knowledge of sexual assault or rape. These are horrifying allegations. And it's really, really important that Congress continue to do the work that I pushed it to do when I was there, which is about accountability.
That brings us back to the race where, as I said, there are now 9 of you. How do you break through the noise?
So this is a great opportunity for Democrats. We still have a lot of undecided voters in this moment as we get close to ballots. But let's be really clear. I think what this moment reveals is this race is about MAGA values versus California values. With 2 Republicans at the top, it's infuriating, for example, to hear Steve Hilton talk about Donald Trump's endorsement when we have Californians who are still waiting a year plus later for disaster assistance, when we have 25% of our California hospitals that might be closed because of Donald Trump's actions. I have a track record of taking on Donald Trump. That's everything from pushing and winning free COVID testing for every single American when I took on his CDC director, to exposing his postmaster, Louise DeJoy, for not knowing anything about postage. So I have a track record of going toe-to-toe to Donald Trump. You combine that with my life's work on affordability, and I think that we have a really strong message to take to voters here in these final weeks of the race.
I think it's fair to say that a huge chunk of California voters couldn't identify every person by name running for governor here, would not recognize them. But Tom Steyer is spending more on advertising than any other campaign in America in this cycle. And his ads, as Politico puts it, are omnipresent. How do you compete with that kind of visibility?
You compete on what's at stake in this moment and what you bring to the governor's race. This is a moment when there's so much concern about affordability. Californians want someone who pushes a shopping cart, not somebody who's profited off corporate profits and price gouging. So we are going to run on what I have done to bring down, for example, prescription drug costs. The moral clarity I've shown in calling to abolish ICE. That's a big contrast with a candidate who has profited off ICE detention centers, who has profited off fossil fuels, who has profited off the very things that are hurting California's pocketbooks today. So we are very, very proud of our message. There's a long history in California of people trying to buy the governor's race, and it has never worked to date. I don't think this time's going to be any different. We have to stay really focused on the fact that I bring a fresh perspective, a willingness to challenge the status quo. I think it's really hard for people to believe a billionaire when he says, I know what it's like to worry about making ends meet.
The California Teachers Association, though, did just throw their support behind Tom Steyer. This new poll has Xavier Becerra breaking through, gaining 15 points among Democrats without Swalwell on the ballot. And he talked about that surge this morning on this network on Morning Joe.
It's crystallized the race a bit now, and voters are beginning to focus. And with voters focusing, you're beginning to see the places where people want to go. And I'm fortunate that I am one of the candidates that's been able to surge not just in terms of voter confidence, but also on social media, in contacts, fundraising. It's all been a sign that people really want to know who's running and who they can trust.
So they want to know who's running. They want to know who they can trust. But let me ask you this. When you have so many people in a race, and frankly, in a very democratic state, if you're confused or you don't really know a lot about all these different people who are running, maybe you decide to stay home. Do you have a real, or do you think there is a legitimate concern about turnout? And what do you do about it?
So we are up on TV today advertising as of yesterday to voters across California's media markets. The week before that, I was across the state doing town halls and public events open to every California voter. And so I think we just continue to campaign. I think all of this terrible, horrific allegations toward Representative Swalwell has actually created a lot of focus on who else is running. So that's our opportunity to take advantage of. I've been in this race for over a year, and I have a track record of taking on Donald Trump and winning tough elections right here in California. So I am excited to keep campaigning, and I feel really, really good about where we are. As you mentioned, Tom Steyer has spent $110 million. I lost track of, I can't even count that high, to wind up right there where we are, right in the margin of error, nearly a tie.
Katie Porter, good to see you. Thank you for coming on the program.